Hey folks, welcome back to the Sedgwick Jimmy channel. We're certainly glad to see you, and today we're continuing with our spooktacular October by looking at Gilles De Rais, or Gilles De Rais as some would say it, a French noble who fought alongside Joan of Arc before possibly becoming a child murderer. What's his story? Well, that's what we're here to talk about, so let's get into it. De Rais was born around 1405 to a noble family, though his parents died when he was 10, so he and his brother were raised by their grandfather. Fun fact, his grandfather tried to marry a 12-year-old De Rais to a rich 4-year-old heiress in Normandy, but it fell through. De Rais was given a privileged education, which included military and moral lessons. However, one of these stuck, the other apparently not so much. Europe has spent much of the last 1,000 years or so in pretty much constant warfare, and the French and English were a big part of that. He fought with distinguishment during the 100 Years' War, awarded the military distinction of Marshal of France, and was present with Joan of Arc at the Siege of Orleans. It's worth noting that he wasn't in attendance when Joan of Arc was burned at the stake in 1431, but it was around this time that he began to look to the future after his military career ended. Starting in 1432, De Rais began to sell off his property. He had the Chapel of the Holy Innocents built, where he his own self officiated and created the production, and I'm gonna probably butcher this, Le Mystère du Siege d'Orléans, or the Mystery of the Siege of Orleans. Now this was a huge endeavor. We're talking almost 150 speaking parts and somewhere around 500 extras, so basically comparable to many big budget tentpole films of today, but in the 1430s. In addition, the 600 or so costumes created for and used in each production were tossed out and remade before every performance, which also included all you can eat and drink for free. And to pay for all this, he sold off more properties. He sold all but 2 of his castles, all of his land holdings, and several duchies, and it got so bad that his family appealed to the Pope and then the King of France in order to stop his destruction of their fortune. The king therefore proclaimed him a spendthrift and made it illegal for him to sell off any more property nor for anyone to buy it from him. You know you're spending way too much money when the king cuts you off. Now keep in mind that pretty much everything from here on out is from testimonies at De Rais' trial as well as taken from his own confessions. In 1438, De Rais began to seek out knowledge on alchemy and the summoning of demons, not that those two are your typical bed partners, and through readings from magical books, he set his mind to summoning a demon known as Baron. He tried the summoning 3 times, each a failure, with the idea being that he would make a pact with the demon in exchange for, you guessed it, a fortune. After a 3rd failure, De Rais was informed that Baron was unhappy and required a sacrifice of a child. Yep, you can probably surmise where this is going. The first child snatched and murdered was a 12-year-old boy who had been lent to De Rais in order to act as a messenger. When he was never seen again, De Rais claimed ignorance and said that he had probably been killed or captured by bandits along the way. This was the first of anywhere between 80 and 200 boys and girls that were acquired, tortured, sexually assaulted, and murdered, their bodies typically burned after De Rais was done with them. And whatever you can imagine that means, it was far worse. The things he's accused of are bad enough that I'm not going to go into detail here. Let's just leave it at that he did some pretty horrific things before and after he murdered these children. After kidnapping a cleric in 1440, an investigation was raised and De Rais' crimes began to be discovered. It was made rather apparent that he was guilty, especially since A, his accomplices fully disclosed everything, and B, he confessed that all that they had said was true. It should be added that his confession was not tortured out of him, as was the case much of the time in those days. The villagers lined up to tell their stories at his trial, of how their children had gone to his castle to beg for food and were never seen again. The youngest of his victims was only 6 years old. Much of what his accomplices testified was stricken from the record for being so horrendous. He and his compatriots were sentenced to death, and all 3 were hung then burned. It is worth noting that a small group believed that he was innocent, and that the charges were either created to further the church and or local nobles' powers and fortune, or because of a witch hunt going on at the time. It's also worth noting that De Rais was the inspiration for the famous story Bluebeard, which lives on to this day. And that's just going to about do it for our quick look at the life and crimes of Gilles De Rais. And if you liked it, why don't you give us a like? If you want to see more, give us a subscribe. And if you have anything to add or any ideas for future episodes, why don't you head on down in the comments and let us know. We appreciate you being here and look forward to seeing you here in the future for more Sedgwick Jimmy. Come check it out.